We'll take a look at migrating particle systems in this tutorial. Same as migrating anything else, really. We just got a bit of organization to do to get it to all come about. So when you are in your Epic launcher, we're going to fire up the engine, and we're going to make a project from one of the presets. So once we're into the, set your project or select new project or whatever, we'll go into games and press next. And then in here, third person will work. I think first person probably has it. I mean, they may all have it actually. I don't know and I haven't looked, but third person I know has got it. So I'm going to say third person project. I'm going to store that project. It's pretty much going to be a temp location, and third person example is what I'm going to call it. I'm just going to leave all of the defaults, I think, except if this says no starter content, make sure you say with starter content, because we want the starter content. Okay, so make sure that's enabled with starter content in it. And I'm just going to be able to, I'm going to delete the project when I'm done anyways, but I'm just going to call this third person example, and I'm going to go ahead and create the project. So the project launches for me. I'm just going to open up the sources panel, way easier than navigating all this, I find. And we're going to go into starter content, and we're going to go down to particle systems, and we've got a bunch of different particle systems we can use here. So if I drag out fire, you can see that we've got a nice fire going here. And it looks pretty cool. Just hit G to hide the icon. So there you go. There's our fire going. It's pretty straight up. We've got some different smokes we could use. There's some sparks. I guess some sort of explosion one that just does this. It just fires once and ends. So you only, as soon as you hit play, it'll fire. So you'd have to fire it in some way, through a blueprint or something. There's ambient dust, which just creates this ambient dust everywhere. Like they're little tiny specks. You can barely see them. I can just see them. So if you need sort of dust effects, and again, you could go into the systems and play with this and make it more or less, but careful, speed is an issue. Sparks obviously looks kind of cool, just kind of going everywhere. If you need something that looks like it's kicking out sparks, you could rotate it on its side. Oh, no, you can't. Maybe you can't. Looks like it's using gravity to pull it down, so that won't change. And we've got one that's kind of a steam kind of thing. So let's migrate, a couple of these over. I like this steam. That's kind of cool. That'll look nice. And I like the fire. So I'm going to highlight both of those. And I'm going to right click and go to Asset Actions and Migrate. And it'll ask you, do you want to save? I'm not interested in saving anything here that I've just done. So I'm just going to hit Don't Save. It's going to ask you what is going to get migrated. So in this case, it's migrating over the particle systems, the fire and the steam that I picked, and it's going to be sending over these materials and these textures. So I'm just going to hit OK. Then I'm going to go and find my project. So that's going to be in my island racing, because my project looks nothing like yours. Remember that. Into the content folder. And I'm going to drop it directly in the content folder. And again, make note, my project looks nothing like your projects. Okay, the directory structure is not correct for your projects. So I want to say select. So in my project, I can now find starter content, and that's where the particles were. So it's migrated those over. If I drag out fire, I've got fire. If I drag out my steam, I've got the steam going. So what we want to do is we want to reorganize this a fair bit. Now, again, your folder system is different, but you have an assets folder, and this is where the assets should reside. And of course, you've got a textures folder and you have a materials folder. So I'm going to reorg some of this. What I'm going to do is just take the particle folder, and I'm going to move this up into my assets folder. So it's one of my assets. So I'm going to move that here. And with that up in there, so now there's my particles. So my particles are there. The materials, I'm going to drag back out down to my materials and say move here. And I'm going to rename this, hitting just F2 is the easiest way. And I'm going to call this particle materials. And I have my textures folder. I'm going to drag and drop that into my textures, and just make it more clear, because two textures folder don't make sense. F2 again, and I'm going to call this particle textures. So I've got that. This starter content folder is now garbage. Don't need it, and there's nothing in there. And so now I should have that particle folder or particles folder in the correct location, and things make sense. You can leave these named right now if you want as they are because they're not yours at this point. But if you wanted to name them, I don't forget what the prefixes are that we need, but we can now drag out and we should have fire and we should have steam and whatever else you decided you're going to migrate over. Now, of course, be certain that adding piles and piles and piles of particles everywhere won't mask your poor work or models or textures. You can't just hide them under steam and expect me not to see them. I'm not grading the particles. I'll delete them out of your scene if they're in my way. But also, it'll slow things down, and so we don't want to slow things down. So we could, go and throw that in there, maybe creating some steam coming out, out where the pipes hit the water or whatever. Maybe there's a leak in a pipe or whatever. Now, you can go and play with the materials. You can figure out how these things work. And if you want to know, that's another day I can show you.